Welcome to the Fit Rich Life podcast, a show where we talk about money, entrepreneurship, health and fitness, and building a life you absolutely love. Is your money situation a dumpster fire? Or maybe your money just needs some love and attention because you've been avoiding it. In today's special guest episode, I get to interview Chloe Daniels, who has increased her net worth by $400,000 after starting at $70,000 in debt when she had a come to Jesus moment and realized that her spending was not aligned with her true values or the life she wanted to live. Chloe, also known as Chloe Bear Money Coach, has built a community of over 300,000 people on TikTok and Instagram by educating people on how to invest and build wealth the lazy way. Her work has been featured on CNBC, Entrepreneur, Bloomberg, Business Insider, and she's even been a recent participant at White House influencer briefings for new policies on student debt and other issues her audience is facing. Her ultimate goal is to provide education in a fun, easy to understand, and accessible way without the overwhelm, shame, and confusion often associated with finances. Chloe has worked with thousands of individuals to improve their finances. In this episode, here are some things you will learn about. 1, how to get started on your money journey even if you're scared. 2, how to increase your income. 3, how to improve your money mindset. 4, building an online business, and a whole lot more. This is a great show for anyone who knows it's time to have a come to Jesus moment with your money situation, or anyone who's interested in entrepreneurship. The insight, strategies, and wisdom Chloe shares will empower you with your own money journey. Please enjoy a wide-ranging conversation with Chloe Daniels. Chloe Daniels, aka Chloe Bear Money Coach, welcome to the show. So good to have you.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
So to kick things off, let's talk about your come to Jesus moment with your money.
Yeah. So kind of you and I had been talking a little bit earlier about what we were doing to even before we got to the point of talking about money on the internet. And for me, I had spent a few years really working on my mental health and my relationships and kind of figuring out that side of things. And one day I was actually hungover from a Beyonce concert. And I was like, man, is this what my life is going to be? Just like constantly spending money and then, looking at like feeling like crap the next day and like going out and doing all of this stuff. And I was like, I really need to make a change in my life. And these Sunday mornings where I'm waking up hungover in my late 20s, they were just this huge, it felt like a waste. It felt like, I'm not really making any progress on these goals. I need to do something differently. And a lot of it is rooted in my money. And so what I decided to do in that moment, I had no idea what to do with when it came to money. I had tried the envelope method from Dave Ramsey so many times. And like, I literally tried that method for like 2 years and failed over and over again, but I just kept doing it for some reason. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to just write down everything that I spend money on for the next 2 weeks and kind of see where it's actually going. Because in my head, it was always like, oh, I know where my money's going. It's going to rent. It's going to student loans. It's going to all these different things. But when I did that and I actually categorized things and I looked at like, oh, holy shit, I have like $600 every 2 weeks going to like eating out and drinking. Those two things, $600. And granted, the Beyonce concert was within that time frame, but I was like, that's a trip to Germany to go see one of my best friends. That's like money invested. That's the emergency fund that I've been trying to save for 2 years, 3 years. And here it is. I have this money, but I am just spending it on things that don't actually bring me value. And one of the wake up moments for me was like, if you look at my money would tell you that my biggest values were drinking and eating out. And I was like, that doesn't feel good. That's not what I would actually say my values are. What I would say my values are freedom, time, travel, spending time with my family. But my bank account was showing me something totally different. And so I had this moment where I was just like kind of grossed out with my spending. And I was like, all right, Chloe, dumber people than you have figured this out before. Like, let's just try to do something. And then that's when I started looking into different budgeting techniques. I figured out the zero-based budget, and I just started like slowly but surely learning more about personal finance and making changes. But it was with the confidence of dumber people than you have done this before.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I have a similar story. Like my money was like a total mess. Like I was seriously in debt and for the most part made decent money, but my values were not aligned with my spending at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I started tracking my money that I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like this is like, and for me that kind of come to Jesus moment was in my 30s where I was like, I think a lot of people go through this. They hit their, they start to get close to 30 or maybe they're in their 30s and they're like, I don't have any wealth.
Yeah, is
Like
this it?
what the hell have I been doing?
Right. And am I going to struggle forever? And one of the things, too, that like the other flip side of my come to Jesus moment was I had spent so much time just thinking that the solution to my answer was like, just find someone to do it for you. Like, get
Mm,
into a relationship where the other person knows more about money and like, then they'll be the one who's responsible for these things. But that ended up putting me in like bad relationships over and over again with people who were worse off financially than I was and would take advantage of the fact that I was like, oh, I just, I want somebody to do this for me. And that it landed me in credit card debt with exes. It landed me in situations where I had to live with abusive exes for a long period of time. And so it was like, even all that accumulating to that Beyonce morning, the post hangover morning, it was just like, I'm so tired of like acting like I have no control over this. And at the end of the day, the common denominator is me. Like, and if I want to change something, it's like I've changed so many other things in my life. I changed my mental health, I changed my relationships, I changed my jobs, I've changed all these things. Why can't I change my relationship with money? And so it's almost like we just have to get tired of our own shit to finally be like, okay, it's time to make a change. And I hope, like, I think probably one of the reasons you teach as well is like, I don't want people to have to get to the like, oh my God, I'm 15K in debt from a credit card that my ex used. I don't want people to get to the point where they're like spending every Sunday wondering like, is this it? It's like, how do we get people to the point without having to hit like their version of rock bottom?
100% agree. Same thing,
Mm-hmm.
in my own story, just like so stressed about my debt to the point where
Mm-hmm.
I was like waking up at like, 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, I try to keep it in the back of my mind and not deal with it. But like the more I didn't deal with it, the worse, the bigger the monster
A
got
hundred
until
percent.
yeah. So I'm just curious, like I know you went from $70,000 in debt to now over, a 300K net worth. So you've basically increased your net worth by, nearly $400,000 or more. Like other than the tracking, what were some of the other steps you took or resources? Like how did you start to turn your money journey around?
Yeah, I became obsessed with personal finance, and like, so a lot of it started with just educating myself on what did wealth building look like? How do people get out of debt? And for me, my journey started with like the belief that debt freedom was the ultimate goal. I didn't even think about the wealth building side of things because I had only heard about how debt was super stressful in my parents' relationship. I never get to credit card debt. The student loan debt is like, the end of your life. And so I really went into it just being like, how do I get out of this debt as quickly as possible? But by doing that, it led me to learn more about wealth building. And as I started to educate myself about wealth building, I was like, ooh, there's more to the equation here than just this debt freedom. Debt freedom is such a small portion of it. And it's like, it's not even required. Like, debt freedom is not a requirement to wealth. Like, you look at the world's wealthiest people, and a lot of them have debt because debt can be a tool. But the way that I approached it was first with learning how to budget because that was like looking at the resources I currently had and how can I best optimize the resources I currently have, and that was through budgeting. Which, by the way, for anyone who's listening to this and is starting their budgeting journey, I went over budget for the first 8 months, and like we're talking by like hundreds of dollars. Like it took me a while to find a system that actually worked for me. So if you've messed it up the first 2-3 months or whatever, that's normal. We're just trying to get better and better every single month that we're doing it. And that was huge for me to kind of learn that lesson. But as I was also learning about money and learning these management systems, I was like so focused on increasing my income as much as possible because it was like as soon as I increase my income and I know what to do with it, the way for me to get out of debt and to start building wealth is I need more money in order to be able to do that. So when I had that kind of come to Jesus moment in 2018, I think I was making about 70K. And then very quickly after that, I started making 90K. I got a promotion. And then every like 6 months, I was either getting a promotion or got a significant raise for something that I did at work. And by the time that I quit my job in 2021 to do what I do now full time, I was making 130K just at my 9 to 5. And then I was also doing Clobear on the side. So I was constantly looking at like, how do I raise my income at my 9 to 5 as quickly as possible? Then I started doing side hustles as well, just to get to the point where I had more resources to do what I wanted to do. It was like I figured out how to do it on what I was making, but I didn't like the timeline. I was like, I want this to go faster. Like, I don't want to have to do this for, 20, 30 years. I want to be able to get there in 10 years or get there in 15 years was my original plan. So the increasing income is huge. And I feel like we don't talk about that enough in the personal finance space sometimes because it's like, oh no, that's the career coach's job. That's the people out there. But it's like increasing income is so important and we really can't ignore that. So budgeting, increasing income. I did focus on paying off debt for the first 2 years. And then as I was learning about personal finances, I realized, it actually doesn't really make sense for me to be putting like 2 grand on my debt every single month because my debt was 3.54% interest rate, which like it kills me now that I paid that off so aggressively because 3.54% interest rate is basically free money when the average inflation rate over the last 100 years is around 3%. But in my head, I just had these beliefs around debt that like, if you have debt, you're stupid. If you have debt, you're trapped. If you have debt, you're failing. And I've run the calculations. If I had just like paid the minimums on my low interest rate debt, I essentially lost out on $1 million in opportunity costs over the long term, which, it's just numbers. It's one of those things that we now use to educate people on why debt is nuanced. But I wish I had instead been investing super aggressively at that time rather than paying off that debt. So that was kind of part 3 or 4 was how do I start investing and how do I, make this money work harder for me rather than just paying off my debt.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. You've said debt is a tool, and um, a tool can be used to help yourself or harm yourself depending on how you use the tool, right? You can use a hammer to build a house, but you can also like smash your finger depending on how much attention or
Right.
intention you're paying. So I totally get that. Similar thing, like I paid off all my school loans and now I'm looking back and I'm like, man, I could have just made the minimum payments and socked more money into my investments and I'd probably be way further ahead than I am now.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something I think liberating on the emotional side from becoming debt free when you've been haunted by your debt for years, maybe decades. That like because money is, but there's math, like here's what the pure math says, but then there's also the emotional side of money.
Right.
And I think if you kind of mentioned with money being somewhat of a issue in your own family and upbringing. That was my case. Like my parents separated and divorced mostly because of money. So like I had a lot of negative feelings around being in debt, so to
Yeah,
speak.
well, and that's why the mindset piece is so important because it's like, yes, I definitely recognize that debt is this heavy thing for so many people, but it's like then we also have to start questioning why. Why is it so heavy? Why does it feel like this burden? And I feel like a lot of the times there's education and mindset work that can make that debt a little less burdensome because it's like if you look at the numbers and you understand the numbers and you figure it out, like for some people, yeah, it is going to make sense for them to go ahead and pay off that debt early or to not invest as much while they're paying off that debt so they can get it out early. But I think it's like it's so easy to be like, yeah, but I paid it off because it feels good. And it's like, okay, but why don't we just question, maybe why does that feel good but investing doesn't feel good, or why does that feel good but going after that next promotion or raise doesn't feel good? So I think that's why we can't talk about money without talking about the mindset part of things and understanding our money traumas, understanding our money beliefs, understanding the things that hold us back, because we could do a lot of things that feel good, and feeling good, we got to question that sometimes, if feeling good isn't necessarily the best path for us. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. So I'm curious, like, what are some ways like people can improve their money mindset or their relationship with money?
Oh, yes. I love this question because it's something that I feel like we have to constantly keep up on. So I'm somebody who is a money educator who's done all this stuff in the last 4 years, and I'm still working on my money mindset. I feel like you probably relate. Yep, you probably relate, because personal growth and development is just this onion. And I'm like, when do the layers stop? When do I get to be like this fully fulfilled person that has no issues? And I just don't think, I think we're just constantly up leveling. And it's like we get better problems the older we get, or the more, not necessarily the older we get, but the more we work on ourselves. And so your relationship with money and your mindset around money, there's going to be constant tune-ups and constant, like, you have to continue to feed yourself good thoughts and things like that. So some of the biggest things that you can do is figure out your money story, figure out what are the beliefs I currently have around money. And like, one easy way to do that is like, sit with the word money, like, and brain dump, write out all the feelings and thoughts that come up when you're just sitting with the word money, or you're sitting with the word debt, or you're sitting with the word invest, things along those lines. Like, any blocks that you have, like, they're going to come out as you start brain dumping all these different thoughts that you have around that word, just the word, the power of a word. I think also, once you do that, then going through and then looking at like, what in here are objectively true. Like, if it's like, oh, I'm bad with money, or debt is bad, or I'm scared to invest, or things like that. Like, which one of these are like facts? Like, are there any facts that are coming up here that 100% are true statements? Most of the time, there's probably not a lot of true statements in there. There may be like some within the gray area, but it's like, which one of these, which of these beliefs do I have power to change or investigate or look at and see, like, is this actually a helpful belief, or is this a harmful belief? And then if you start recognizing these harmful beliefs, well, could I change this to be a more helpful belief? We don't have to go all the way to like, if you've spent your whole life being like, money is scary, I'm overwhelmed, it's terrifying, I don't want to talk about it. We don't have to jump to like, it's amazing and I love it so much, because you're probably not going to believe that. You're probably not going to resonate with that right away. But what's the next best step or next best belief that you could get behind? Like, maybe it's like, I'm bad with money. Maybe instead of like switching immediately to the affirmation of like, I'm good with money, because you're like, am I? Like, that's hard to believe. You can be like, I have the ability to be good with money. I am capable of being good with money. So really looking at and identifying those beliefs, I feel like, is square one. It's like, let's figure out what exists within us right now. And then going out and educating yourself and filling yourself with, obviously, education on personal finance, but actually the mindset part. So some of the books that changed my life all around, but are also very much related to personal finance. And I'm actually listening to this one again. And it's, as I'm listening to, I'm like, man, I love this book. I want to study this book. I want to like dive deep into this and like really work through some of the stuff that I'm even coming up with now 5 years into my journey. And it's so corny. It's You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. Have you read that?
Hell yeah.
Yes.
So I literally just had all my coaching clients write a Dear Money, let's have an us talk.
Yes.
And
it's
I
so
like
good.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of Jen Sincero as well, and that book, because she has you go and work on the mindset part of it.
Yes, hugely.
Which is,
yeah, and she's so like beginner friendly, but also I'm like I used to be a personal growth self-help junkie. So like, I'm not a beginner in the self-help world, and I still love it, because it's like, she's done all the work, she's gone to all the seminars, and she's condensed it down into this really fun book. about like that doesn't feel cringe all the time. And she even jokes about it, where it's like it's really accessible to the everyday person. And it's very helpful on just like kind of lighting you up, or at least that's been my experience. And then she has another book called You're a Badass at Making Money as well, which I've also really enjoyed. And that's an entire book around money mindset. So I think going out there and reading and maybe Jen Sincero is not your cup of tea. There's so many things out there. There's the classic Napoleon Hill book that I personally find very boring, but it's like Think and Grow Rich. But there's tons of them out there. Go see what is your cup of tea. Go out there and start looking at books that are focused on. There's The Psychology of Money. There's a lot of things out there. To go out and start listening to. And if books aren't your thing, there's tons of podcasts, there's tons of blogs, there's so much available these days.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's, if people are unfamiliar with Chloe's content, it's Chloe Money Coach on Instagram and probably TikTok and all the other socials. But Chloe teaches it in a way that is hilarious, like a lot of like dancing and, hip hop and the educating at the same time. And like, that's, how I discovered, I was like, hell yeah, someone who's like making money, not only fun, but like kind of funny at the same time. And I just feel like learning about something in a way that is entertaining makes it stick and makes it so much more approachable. So,
well, thank
even
you.
if, yeah,
Even
if you don't resonate.
I was just gonna say it's so kind of you to call what I do hip hop. I think we're insulting hip hop dancers by you'll understand once you go watch my content. I'm not a good dancer. That's the funny part.
But that's like almost like, I mean, I think you're a great dancer, but like you don't take yourself like so fucking serious. And instead you're like, hey, I'm willing to like make fun of myself and like talk about all the like money fuck ups I've had, as well as like how I learned from them. And I just like, I love your kind of like raw vulnerability, like mixed in with humor. And, if you don't resonate with Jen Sincero's book, like You Are a Badass at Making Money, like check out Chloe's content, or, there's so many other like content creators, and it's just finding those voices that resonate with you and, the season of life you're in and your personality. And it's, I think you couldn't be more spot on about like the self-education piece.
Yeah.
Because self-education doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to suck. Because like, I agree, like I read Think and Grow Rich a long time ago, and I was like, this is amazing. But like, it is written like back in, I don't know, the early 1900s. And it is it's just a whole nother language and dry, boring as fuck. So
yeah, and like we're lucky now that there's been a huge, I think 2020 has really spawned a bunch of new finance creators and a bunch of money coaches, and a lot of them have now written books. So like we have more education out there that's more aligned with like the 2000s, not the 1900s, where you've got options. So it's like if somebody doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. You have hundreds if not thousands of other options. And that's why it's so important in the space. So many of us, like when we're starting a business, we're like, I don't know, there's so many other people doing it. And it's like, well, you're going to resonate with different people. And that's why it's so important for more people to be doing the work that you and I are doing, because everyone's story is different and everyone's going to resonate with someone differently.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to circle back real quick on the increasing income, because I fully agree. Like, it's great to cut your expenses, but like after you go the process of like minimizing your expenses or optimizing your expenses, you got to work on the other side of the equation, which is increasing income. And honestly, I think the first step is like increasing your income within your current job or your current career. You don't have to like necessarily switch jobs or switch careers. Like, how do you recommend people think about increasing their income?
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I totally agree. I think so often people want to immediately go for a side hustle, and it's like, oh, the sexy, fun, exciting side hustle. But unless you're planning on taking your side hustle full time, a side hustle at the end of the day is just a second job. And for most of us, that is not sustainable. Having a second job is not, again, unless we want to take it full time, which, I understand. Sometimes you don't know until you're doing the side hustle whether or not you want to take it full time. And I'm all about like going out and experimenting. But most of the time, doing things like driving Uber or DoorDash or things along those lines, those are like good for quick injections of cash, but not sustainable over the long term. And that's why I think it's so important to focus on your 9 to 5 of like, where are the opportunities here where I can increase my income? And the way to do that is having those conversations with your direct manager of being like, hey, I really want to grow at this company. Here's what I think I need to do in order to get to the next level or to get to the next promotion or whatever. What do you think? Like, is this something that sounds aligned? Is this possible to do here? What do you think I need to do to get to this next level? And continue having those conversations with your direct manager. I think so many people think that that conversation only happens in the annual review. And it's like, no, that conversation needs to be happening all the time in your weekly meetings or in your quarterly meetings or in your monthly meetings, whenever it's happening. Like when I was working on increasing my income at my 9 to 5, any one-to-one meeting that I had with my boss was like there was a portion of that was dedicated to talking about my growth and how do I get to the next level? How am I doing? How's my progress? Is there something that I need to be working on? Because you don't know what you don't know, and sometimes we have like a blinders on when it comes to our own performance. So I think getting used to having these constant conversations, that way when you go to the annual review, the meeting where you're ready to like get that promotion or whatever it is, it's not a surprise. The last thing we want to do when we come to those annual reviews or this conversation about compensation is for it to be a surprise that you want to grow. That needs to be an ongoing collaboration with you and your boss. The second thing is you've got to be your own best advocate. You've got to be tracking all your wins. You've got to be keeping track of every time you brought in the company more money, or anytime somebody said something nice about you, or anytime that you killed a project, because no one is paying attention to your career as much as you are paying attention to your career. It is not your boss's job to pay attention. It's not the company's job to pay attention. It is your job to pay attention, keep track, and bring that data and be like, look at all this cool shit that I did in the last year, and here's why you need to pay me more. And that's also going to help you when you're looking for new jobs. And when you're looking for new jobs, what's the number one thing that needs to go on the resume? Your results. What have you been doing in these positions that cause the results that this new employer is going to want to see? So I think those three things are huge. Having those conversations, making sure that those conversations are happening with your boss and that it's known that you want to grow, tracking all of your wins and making sure that you have the data to back it up, and making sure that when you do finally go for a job, that you're focusing on your results, not just what you do, because no one cares about what you do. Like, people can generally understand what you do based off of the job description and where you were working at. They want to see what are the results. When I was hiring for a content assistant role, the only person who put true like numbers on their actual results was who I hired, because it was like that stood her apart from everyone else. We had an amazing amount of incredible applications, but she was the only one who took the time to give me actual results. And I was like, this is an easy decision because of it. So I think those things are really important. And I think that if you're at a company that doesn't value your growth and you want to grow, that's also a good thing to know. So that's why we need to be having those conversations, because then you've got to essentially do what you can do at that position, but like you'll need to know it's time to leave. And the fastest way to get paid more is unfortunately usually to leave a company. There was that 2017 study that Forbes wrote about that showed that people who stay at a job more than 2 years over the length of their career, it reduces their income by 50%, which is crazy. And that was a 2017. It's a crazy study. I would love to see an update on the study, because it hasn't been published since 2017, I believe. And obviously things have changed, but the job loyalty doesn't exist anymore, because we're not able to get paid what we need to get paid if we stay at the same company for long term.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and your own experience speaks to that. I mean, you literally over the course of like 3 years almost doubled your income. Like just 10K short of doubling your income from 70K to 130K. And, obviously everything you just told us is what you did. I'm curious, did you have to go from one company to another company in those 3 years?
Yeah, so the 70K to the 90K increase was the biggest jump of income that I had, and that was me going from nonprofit to consulting. And that was, I remember I remember I wasn't excited about the job because it sounded so boring in comparison to what I was doing at the time, which is actually very helpful if you're like not desperate for the job. If it's like one of those boring jobs that are it's going to pay you more, it was significantly less work as well, but it allowed me to so easily negotiate because it was like they gave me the offer. I think they offered me like 81K or something, which is only 11K more than what I was making, and I just kind of like I was like, "Huh, thank you so much for the offer." They were going to offer me a car too. And I was like, I don't really need the car. So how about you guys pay me 95K and, I'll be able to give you an answer today if you're able to do that. But in my head, I was like, like I'm not going to this company for 81K. And they came back and they were like, how about 91K? And I was like, that's a better offer. That's, and so I think that is really helpful too, is like when you're the prize and like they're going to benefit from hiring you, it makes negotiation so much easier. But yeah, there was one company switch while I was there. And then once I got into the consulting gig, trying to think, I think I had 2 or 3 promotions in the 3-ish years that I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I just want to double click on the fact that you said it was actually less work and more money. And that's the thing. If you never put yourself out there and see what else is like available in the marketplace, and also what your value is in the marketplace, like you never know. And like, even though the work was maybe more boring than what was there, just that ability to raise your income so significantly, but in a way where you're like, hey, I'm okay if I don't take this. So I
Yeah.
may as well ask for everything that I want and see if they give it to me. And then, you're able to make a significant jump. So pretty amazing. Transitioning a little bit into kind of your entrepreneurial career, like when did you start the kind of online business, and like kind of walk us through like how you did that with like a regular job, and were you trying to build an online business, or you were just kind of doing it for fun, or like, yeah, take us through that part of
Yeah.
the journey.
So, like I said, Clobear was started in 2017 as a little Weebly blog that talked about like mental health. And it was basically like an online journal. And at no point was it like this is going to turn into something. It was just like a outlet for me. After reading the You're a Badass book, I was like, I don't know what to do, but I'm going to do something. And we're going to see where that leads. And it led me to this amazing life that I have now, where I am a full-time business owner and I get to help people with their money. But it took a while for me to get to the point where I could dream big enough that I was like, wait, I can do this. And this is something that I want to do. And it's okay to have this dream. And because for a while, I think I was like, oh no, having this kind of building an online business, that's so cringe. Like, trying to create content, it's so cringe. I don't want to put myself out there in that way. And I had to get over myself and to be like, okay, what do you really want? And it was 2021 where I had been dabbling in the space for a while. I had never really taken it fully seriously, but it was still taking up a big chunk of time because in 2020 I like was posting on YouTube, posting on the blog, barely posting on Instagram, kind of like dabbling in Instagram, but mostly all I was doing was sharing my budgets and sharing like what I learned along the way. And then 2021 came around and I was like, I've been doing this for a few years now, and I've been kind of half-assing it for a few years, even though it's taking up a ton of my time, even with half-assing it. It's like, what if I just like really took it seriously for a year, and then I could see what would happen if I want to keep doing this. But like, I feel like I need to at least just take it really seriously for a year, and then I can reevaluate at the end of it. And that was in January 2021 when I made that decision. And I was like, all right, we're going to do it. That's when I started my TikTok account. And March 2021, I rebranded from Clo_Bear to Clo Bear Money Coach. And by October, I was able to quit my job and do this full time. So it wasn't until January 2021 that I was like, let's do this and let's see if I can do this. And I, again, kind of with the same thought process that got me into managing my money. I just thought, you know what, dumber people than you have done this before, less talented people than you have done this before. Why not me? Why not? Like, let's just see what happens. And I created that TikTok account. I didn't start dancing right away, But I noticed, because I was new to TikTok. Most people had like gotten on TikTok like in the years prior, especially with the pandemic. And I was scrolling through TikTok and I was like, wait a second, everybody's dancing on this app. Like, do I need to be dancing? And so I think it was in like probably February or March where I finally did my very first dancing reel. And I was just having so much fun with it. And I had so much fun creating that piece of content. People really enjoyed the content. They thought it was hilarious. And it also made them want to do the things that I mentioned in the video. And I was like, wait, this could be really fun. I'm going to incorporate dancing and like entertainment into teaching people about personal finance. And that just really took off. Not, you know, I'm sure other people were doing things similar, but there was nobody doing it like I was doing it. And so it felt really good because it felt really authentic to myself. And, just kind of took off. And I did the one-on-one coaching, and one-on-one coaching kind of went crazy. I think I started taking clients in. I had dabbled in 2020 where it was like just a few clients. And then in 2021, when I had the business, I was like, all right, we're going to get some structure in place here. Got my LLC in place. And it got to the point where I think it was by May or June, every time I would announce one-on-one coaching slots, they would sell out within 24 hours. And so every single month I would increase my prices and they would still sell out within 24 hours. And what I told myself in the summer was, all right, if I can make $5,000 a month for 6 months, and like counting the months that I had already done that, and I have a year emergency fund saved, I will allow myself to quit my job and do this full time, even though I was making way more than 5K a month in my 9 to 5. But I hit that goal by October. And so October, I quit my job. And then October was like my first 10K month. November was my first 20K month. And then December was like a 50K month because I was able to finally put all of my energy and time into Clobear. And it was just like the universe was like, you made the right move. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. And it's just been a wild journey even since then.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple things I want to drop for the audience. So, Chloe started this in 2017, first as kind of mental health blog, worked on this, for, 4 to 5 years, found kind of started to find success with, her own personal money journey, started creating content around that. And basically this has evolved over like, really the last, 7 years, into like who you are now. And I think a lot of times people look at like online content creators who've, created either coaching businesses or courses. They're like, oh, like, they just did this overnight, but like essentially, took you at least 4 or 5 years before you kind of like, wait a minute, I can make money doing this. And this is all why you're, working a 9 to 5. It wasn't like you were just like sitting at home with, someone else paying the bills, but you had a whole, basically you created a second job for yourself with this content creation career.
Yes.
And, eventually you realize you could do this full time. And I love the fact that you said you gave yourself a goal. Like, I want to make 5K per month for, 5 months in a row before I give myself permission to go after this full time and have a 1 year emergency fund. Cause I think there's a lot of kind of like, I don't know, entrepreneurship porn where it's like, quit your day job, follow your passion. And it's like, no, keep your day job and try to validate some sort of entrepreneurial endeavor and make sure that you have the things in place to protect yourself. Because I'm assuming you didn't have kids, you didn't have a mortgage, and you were able to like, have that 1 year emergency fund, and you had proven the concept of your, online coaching business.
Yeah, I mean, the number one reason that people fail at entrepreneurship is because of money. It's like I wanted to remove that from the equation, and I was so frugal at that point that it was easy for me to save a year emergency fund because it was like, oh, I know how frugal I can be. I'm not as frugal as I used to be, but I remember just being. I originally thought like, oh, I need to make as much as I'm making at my 9 to 5 in order to quit my job, but I was like, why though? Like, what the reason I need to make as much as I'm making at my 9 to 5 is because, like, it's a corporate job and I need this money to be able to invest so I can quit it someday. And I was like, if I make 60K a year, like, that's enough for me to live off of. And it's enough for me to like invest $500 a month to make sure I'm still on track for retirement. But I had already reached Coast Fire. Like, even if I don't invest another dollar, I'll still have millions in the bank by the time traditional retirement age comes around. So it was kind of like, yeah, I could live off of 60K if I needed to live off of 60K. So I think that that's so important, is to prepare yourself financially for entrepreneurship if that's something that you really do want to do. Because again, the number one reason people end up quitting is because of money. And you don't want to have to quit your dream or delay your dream because you quit too soon, like you quit your job too soon or did that too soon. So I do think it's really important to validate it, and that's where the side hustle does make sense if you have an inkling that you might want to do this full time. Now, I get it. Some people are like, there's no way for me. Like, my job is so demanding. There's no way for me to do the side hustle full time, like, while I'm also working. Okay, then save up that emergency fund. Like, pick a number of like, I would be okay with living off of this while I figure out the business, but just know it takes a while. It takes a while for the business to get off the ground. So you need to make a list of like all the other ways you can make money while you are building this business. And maybe that's doing some consulting with your old job. Maybe that's doing DoorDash. Or I remember, do you know who Vanessa Lau is?
Mm-mm.
She's like a huge Instagram like creator that talks about how to grow a business on Instagram or YouTube. And she took a job as a barista. Like, she quit her big cushy corporate job and to start the business. And she took a job as a barista to, I think, get the benefits as well as have, a paycheck while she was building her business. But it was a less demanding job. So she had more time to dedicate to building that business. And now she's like a multi-7-figure business owner.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's a way for everybody. Even if you're married and have kids, like, can your partner support you for a year while you try to like make it work? You know what I mean? Like, does he or she keep the 9 to 5 that covers the, basic living expenses so you can take this risk of, trying to start a business? So I think no matter what circumstance you're in, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, there is a way to do it where you're strategic and smart about kind of protecting yourself from the downside of it not working out.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you said money is the number one reason that, like, entrepreneurship and business doesn't work out. And it just makes me think of like the fact that money is also the number one reason that relationships don't work out.
It's almost like
Marriages.
money is like a big deal or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It just
it's
might be.
almost like it impacts every area of our life. Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
And I think that's why you and I are so passionate about educating and empowering people around money, is because when you get the money pieces figured out, it unlocks the ability to make massive growth and healing and transformation in so many other parts of your life. But if your money is a mess, you almost can't do anything else but like be crushed by your own money problems.
Yep. Yep. And that's why, like, I'm so passionate about the work that we do, because it is truly life changing. It's so cool that we get to do this job where we actually change people's lives and we get paid to do it. Like, it's not, we're not running nonprofits, we're running for-profit businesses, but it's so cool to be able to do something that truly changes people's lives. And like, every time I hear from a student or hear from a follower on like something that they did, and like they're so excited and like on fire with like the fact that they did this thing that they thought they couldn't do, it's just the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. So let's talk about your current offerings. So
Mm-hmm.
someone's totally vibing with your voice, this podcast, and they're like, okay, like, how can Chloe help me with my money journey? Like, what are you currently offering Walk us
Yes,
through.
we have tons of free stuff. So if you go to clobare.com, which bear is BARE, so CLOBARE.com, that has everything. It's got our free guides, it's got our free investing class. I do run a program called the Lazy Investors course where you can work with me, like not one on one, but group coaching settings and a self paced course that usually goes on sale once a month, but it is available at any time on clobare.com. And yeah, that's pretty much the only way that I work with people right now. I do occasionally do one-on-one coaching and very sporadically, but I also do workshops and things along those lines for nonprofits and organizations. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Everything's at clobare.com.
Awesome. Cool. So as we start to wind down this podcast, I like to ask every guest to share one tip, tool, or strategy for health and fitness, one for money, and one for life. And it could be something that translates for all three, or it could be like one for each that is, not related.
Okay, so for health and fitness, my biggest learning lesson is find something that you really love to do. Like when it comes to movement and activity, I discovered jujitsu in the last year and I am obsessed with it. Like I finally feel like I understand like my sister does CrossFit and I did CrossFit for a while because of her and I hated it. Like I liked the lifting part, but I hated the workouts and I just did it cuz like I liked the community aspect of it even though I never like looked forward to going to class. Whereas jujitsu, I will spend 3 hours on a Sunday doing jujitsu. I spend my Friday evenings going to jujitsu. I do like I've started doing competitions with jujitsu. I pay for a private coach for jujitsu because I love it so much. And I never understood how my sister Sydney could like spend hours at the gym, but it's because she loves CrossFit in that way. And so it's like, it doesn't matter what it is, whatever lights you up when it comes to moving your body and getting exercise. I genuinely think that's the most important thing because it's like, it doesn't feel like a workout to me. Like it is. It's like one of the hardest work, like rolling with somebody is one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I've never been so out of breath than the first times. And even now when I roll. But that's been huge for me is doing something that I love. And like keep trying until you find your thing. I've tried so many different things and like I've never loved a physical activity like this ever. It's amazing. So that's one. For life, you said life and then money. Oh man, life. For me, so I don't know if this is advice, but this is just like kind of what my journey has been the last couple of years is and I think a lot of entrepreneurs might resonate with this is I didn't realize how often I did not make time for joy and like fun and experiences that were just there for joy. And I realized that in 2022 when I was doing a road trip around the country and I was in all these new places and I was so afraid to spend money on things, even though I was making more money than I ever dreamed of. And I had a spiritual coach who I was working with, and she's like, why does it feel like you're just like not having any fun? Like you're not going out of your way to like enjoy these experiences. And so I started dedicating like days in a week where it's like, this is a Chloe fun day. We're going to do what Chloe wants to do just for fun. And that could be as simple as like taking myself to the bookstore and allowing myself to buy a book or making a vision board or doing something that's just for Chloe fun, all the way to like booking a hot air balloon ride or renting an ATV and like doing something just like for joy, for no other reason than just for joy. I think it's so important and so underrated. And like, it's so easy to get caught up in the to-do list and all the things that we have to do in order, especially as entrepreneurs. It's so easy to get caught up in that. And then it's like, well, why am I doing all of this if I'm not having fun? If I'm not like living the life I want to live now? Yeah, I haven't reached all my financial goals. I haven't done everything that I ever want to do, but like the life is happening right now. It's happening all the time. So even if you're in debt and you're paying that off, like you still have to enjoy living your life. Which is why I'm a huge not fan of Dave Ramsey because I feel like that man is very good at sucking the fun out of everything. So I think that we can do both. And in terms of money, I mean, that does kind of relate to money, I would say, um, because it's like you still have to make space to live your life now. We can't, this is why I also don't resonate with the fire community anymore, is because I think so many people in the fire community, even though I love the concept of it, which those who are listening, if you don't know what fire is, it's financial independence, retire early. So many people, they just go so hard on the frugality and like reducing their expenses as much as possible. And granted, some people enjoy that process, but it's like they literally stop living their lives just to reach early retirement. And to me, that is letting money control your whole life. And it's like just like not managing your money and feeling like you have no control over it. The act of like being so tight and so like restricted, at least in my experience, it's just like, to me, that's not a full life. Like, it's all about balance and figuring out like, okay, how do I live my life now while also working towards achieving these goals without feeling like I've essentially put my life on pause for 10 years, just to retire early. It's like, well, what happens if you die? What happens if something happens and you can't enjoy your life after you've reached fire? Like, you've got to be enjoying it along the way too, because life is happening right now. It's not happening in 10 years. It's not happening after you lose 10 pounds. It's not happening after any of these things. You've got to enjoy the process now as well. So I think that that's like my life and money tip.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you can frugal yourself into a corner and to a
Mm-hmm.
life that you absolutely hate. And, kind of as you mentioned before, like money is a tool.
Yep.
It's, you know what I mean? You can use it to build a life that you absolutely love and, cultivate freedom and travel and the things that you truly value. But if you're not careful, it can also like run your life in a direction that is not a fulfilling life for you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's like driving yourself into too much debt or getting so over optimized on your expenses that you're like, I am literally just staying at home doing nothing because I'm afraid
You've
to spend any money.
right, like you've forgotten the point of why you're doing this. So I have friends who are trying so hard to retire within the next 5 to 10 years, who have children who are like babies. One's 2 and the other one is a newborn, and they're never home. They're never present. They're traveling more than 50% of the time. And their wife is like, hey, need you to be more present at home. You can't just opt out of your children's life for the next 5 to 10 years. But they're so focused on it because it comes from a place of fear, right? You want to get to that retirement age as quickly as possible because it's a fearful thing. But it's like you're missing out. Like, what are you going to do? Then have a relationship with your kids in 5 to 10 years when they're teenagers? Like, are you sure? Like, or they're preteens? It's like you really, really got to be mindful and intentional about it, because it's so easy to just get so focused on the destination that you completely forget that life is happening on the journey.
Yep. Awesome. So if you want to connect with Chloe, get more of her awesome, entertaining, empowering, educational content, you can visit her on Instagram at Chloe Bear Money Coach. You can go to her website, chloebear.com. That's CLOBARE.com. She's got an investing course, a money management course, and a really powerful community. So definitely give her a follow and check out her content on the web. Chloe, so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.